Hello and welcome to our fourth computer tutorial video on computer basics with the Buncombe County Public Libraries. My name is Alexa Duncan and I'll be talking to you today about Microsoft Word. If you haven't seen our previous tutorial videos, you may want to go back and take a look at those as we'll be discussing some concepts that we have covered in those previous sessions. All right, let's get started. So what is Microsoft Word? So Microsoft Word is a computer program, or you might also hear a computer program called an application, that lets you type a document. It's very similar to a typewriter in that way. Anything that you could type on a typewriter, you can also do in Microsoft Word. And you can do even more than that because it gives you the ability to do things like insert pictures or change the way your text looks, all kinds of really great things. So I have here some examples of the sorts of things that you can create with Microsoft Word: letters, resumes, school papers, forms, reports, flyers, invoices, brochures, and even more. There's even a way that you can create a birthday card to print out with Microsoft Word. We'll get into all of that a little bit more later. So how do we get started with Microsoft Word? Well, what you want to do is you want to start with a new document. In a previous session, we talked a little bit about how to open a computer program or application. So what you're going to do is you're going to start out by opening the computer program or application, Microsoft Word. Oftentimes when you do that, a blank document will automatically come up. But if for some reason that doesn't happen and your computer is set to open things a little bit differently, what you can do is go to the New function, and then you'll see that a blank document is one of your options there. And so you can click on that in order to start a new document. Okay, so let's talk about the parts of a blank document. I'm going to give you a brief overview here of the parts that we're going to talk about, and then we'll talk about them in a little bit more detail. So first you have your quick access toolbar up here. You have your ribbon, which is this whole area right here at the top. You have rulers to give you an idea of how big what you're typing is, here and here. The main part of your blank document is your document area. This is the area where you're going to type or put in other things. Down in the bottom left-hand corner, you have a status bar, which tells you the number of pages that you have used so far, and also gives you a word count on your document. So if what you're doing is writing a paper or something else that has a word count limit, that can be a very useful tool. You can look down there at the status bar. And then over here on the bottom right, you have zoom controls. And so what those do are they let you zoom in and out on your document. You can make it larger or smaller on your screen. We're going to spend some time talking about the ribbon in detail because that's probably the most complicated part of Microsoft Word. That's where all of the different options for things that you can change about your document are. So the ribbon is this whole area up at the top of the document, and it contains different commands that you can click on to change the way your document looks. And those commands are the individual options for the changes that you want to make to your document. For example, you could give it the command to change the font size of your document, or you could give the program the command to type in bold. Those are examples of commands. So the way that the ribbon is organized is it's divided up into tabs. You can kind of see the outline of one right here, Home, where it kind of looks like a tab in a file folder. And as we click along, you'll see that that same shape holds true across these different categories. So each of these tabs contains commands that are similar in what they do. For example, the Home tab contains mostly the most commonly used commands, the ones that most people are going to use pretty frequently when typing a document. Or the Insert tab might give you, it gives you options for inserting things into the document, like pictures, or maybe you want to insert a shape like an arrow. You can insert those things under the Insert tab. And then so each tab is divided up into different groups of commands. So you can kind of see this faint line here that divides these groups. Each of these groups have very similar commands. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about the different types of commands that you're going to find in each of these groups and each of these tabs. So we're going to start with the File tab. That's the one on the far left. That is the tab that will allow you to create a new document, to open an existing document, to save your document or save as, which gives you a new version of it, or to print. There are some other options that you may see on there, but new, open, save, and print are the most common ones that people use under the File tab. Okay, so let's talk about the Home tab. Like I said before, this is the one that you're probably going to use most frequently. It contains the most frequently used commands. For example, formatting commands like changing the type of font or the font size, maybe the font color, or whether it's bold, underlined, or in italic. So you can see all of those kinds of commands are grouped together. It also groups together things like cutting and pasting over here on the left, and things like text alignment here in this next group, which includes whether you want something left justified, centered, right justified. You have options to do bullet points and indentations and all kinds of things like that on here. So that is the Home tab. Let's also talk about the Insert tab. You probably will use this a little bit less frequently than the Home tab, but it still has some very common things in there that people often use. So it allows you to insert things like pictures. You can insert a table. You can insert charts, shapes. Over here, you see the options where you can insert a page number, a header, or a footer. Those are also common things if you're having to write a paper for school. So all kinds of things that you can insert into a Word document. So next up we have the Design and Layout tabs. So the Design tab is not something that you'll probably use very frequently if you're just doing something like writing a school paper or a letter or something along those lines. But if you're doing something that maybe you want to look a little bit more visually interesting, or that's just generally more visual in general, you might want to consider using the themes in this Design tab. It gives you a set of ways that the document is set up and laid out that Microsoft has come up with, that looks visually pleasing and has colors that go together, things like that. And then you also have some options for maybe making the background of a page a specific color or putting a nice border around it. Then the Layout tab also has to do with the way that things on the page look, but it's a little bit more technical. So on this tab, you'll find things like setting your margins. That is something that you might have to do if you're writing an academic paper or maybe a grant application or something like that. Usually very formal things like that have specific ways that you're supposed to set your margins. You can also choose the way that your paper is oriented or turned. So it might be in portrait orientation, kind of up and down like this, or it might be in landscape orientation, which is more side to side like this. You can choose the number of columns. You can do things like insert a page break or make indentations or decide what kind of spacing you want before or after your words. All kinds of useful things like that. So now we have the References and Mailings tab. The References tab, which we have here on the top, is full of really some advanced features. You can do some things like inserting a footnote, but most of us, for our everyday work, won't necessarily use that. You might insert a footnote into an academic paper or maybe a grant application or something like that. But unless you're doing something like that, you probably won't have to look too much in that References tab. The next one is mailing. That also has some advanced features that we won't necessarily use every day, but it does let you format your document to do things like print labels or print on envelope, things like that. Okay, now for our last two. The Review and the View tabs. So the Review tab includes all kinds of things that help you look back over your document and check to make sure that it looks right and things are spelled correctly, so on and so forth. So it has a spelling and grammar check feature. The thing is that with Microsoft Word, spelling and grammar check are always running in the background, so you don't necessarily have to go to this tab and click on spelling and grammar check in order to do that. That's always kind of helping you with that, and that's something that we're going to talk about a little bit later in this tutorial. You do have some other options in here. For example, you can set your proofing language. So if you're typing in a language other than English, which is usually what this defaults to in Microsoft Word for us, you can go in and change those options so that it will do spelling and grammar check in a different language. And so then otherwise it has some other options to help you edit and review your document. And then if we go down to that last tab, the View tab, that changes how you want to view your document on the screen. Usually it starts out with this print layout, which is showing you how it looks on the page, but you can also change the way that you are viewing your document. You can put it into a web layout. You can decide whether or not you want that ruler guideline. So right now we have that ruler on, but you could unclick that in order to remove it. You can have the document show you a navigation pane. If this is a very long document, that might be something that's useful. You can tell it how many pages you want to view at a time and how big you want the document to appear on that screen. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the Quick Access toolbar. If you remember, that is up in the top left-hand corner of your screen when you have a window open in Microsoft Word. So this Quick Access toolbar has some of the most frequently used commands in Microsoft Word. It has save, undo, and redo. Those are what it's preset to. You do have the option to click this down arrow here and change what your change these presets to something else. If you're finding that you're using different commands more frequently than that, you can change it. But they have started us out with save, undo, and redo because those are some pretty frequently used commands. Okay, so now we're going to start talking about the document area. So that is this whole big blank area right now. When you open a new document, what you'll see is that there is this little vertical bar, the cursor, that is blinking. That's your insertion point. So what that means is that when you start typing, that is where it's going to appear. It's going to start appearing to the right of that bar. So like I said, everything you type is going to appear to the right of that insertion point. And the nice thing about Microsoft Word is that everything is preset in a font and a size that most people are going to find easy to read. So you can go in and change that font or the size, but if you don't want to, it's set up so that you can just get in and start typing right away in a way that will be okay for most people to read. If you're accustomed to using a typewriter instead of a computer, some things to remember are that you don't need to press enter or return to go to a new line. Microsoft Word automatically does that for you. When you reach the end of a line of typing, it automatically goes to the bottom of the next line. What you do want to use enter or return for is to start a new paragraph. And also, like I said earlier, spelling and grammar check is always running in the background, which is very helpful and nice. Okay, so now I'm going to show you Microsoft Word in action, some of the things I've been talking about. So what we're going to do is I'm going to start typing something, and then I'm going to show you how I'm changing the appearance of it. So let's see, here we go. When you type a document in Microsoft Word, your text appears to the right of the insertion point. When you reach the end of a line, you do not need to hit enter. However, if you want to begin a new paragraph, then you should hit enter. Let's do that. Here is a new paragraph. Hooray! Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to change the appearance of some of these words. So here's enter. We're going to make it bold. And let's see what else. I'm going to highlight this whole thing and we're going to change the size. We'll make it bigger, go up to 16-point font so you can see how that became bigger. Let's highlight it again and let's change the font. This time we'll make it Arial instead of Calibri. And so now you can see how I have completely changed how all of that looks. And you saw that everything that I was changing, I would highlight before I would click on those options in the tab. So that's how you change something. You highlight it, and then you click that command to change how you'd like it to look. You may have also seen that as I was typing, I accidentally ran two words together, and Microsoft Word automatically split them up because it's always kind of running in the background to try to catch mistakes like that. We're going to talk a little bit more in a bit about spell check and grammar check and things like that. Okay, so let's take a look at that spelling and grammar check. So there are some things that spell check and grammar check in Microsoft Word will catch, and they'll catch automatically. And you can see that those are marked by being underlined with that little squiggly line. It'll be a red squiggly line if it's a spelling error. It will be a blue squiggly line if it's something like an extra space or a grammatical error. And then there are some mistakes that spell check and grammar check can't catch. So I'm going to show you those as well, but let's start with some of these simple things that spell check and grammar check can catch. So I have this document with all of this already typed here. And so what I'm going to go in and do is hover my mouse over that word and right click on the word, and you'll see that it's giving us the option to select the correct word from a drop-down menu. So here, participation, oh wait, it doesn't give us a correct spelling of participation. So what we might have to do there is go in and maybe give it a few more letters and see if it can help us out. Yep, there we go. Participation. And so now you see down here, I've run together are and using. It can split that up. And then let's go down to better. It doesn't have that again. So that might just be one that we have to we know that better is spelled with two T's and we go in and fix it ourselves. But it did at least notify us that it wasn't spelled correctly. So we can see there was just an extra space in those. There it's suggesting that we put a dash between better and informed. And then up here it's saying there's a grammatical error. But if we're happy with the way that that looks, we can tell Microsoft Word to just ignore it, and it's okay that there's a minor grammatical error. In this case, it was a split infinitive, which your English teacher might be very upset with you about for doing, but in non-formal communication, we pretty frequently split infinitives. So that's why I've told it to just go ahead and ignore that for the time being. So now let's talk about the types of things that spell check and grammar check can't catch automatically. You'll see on this example here, I have several paragraphs and there are definitely some mistakes in here, but you see that nothing is underlined. And that's because the kind of mistakes that I have in this example are words that are words and are spelled correctly, but maybe they're used in the wrong context. What we're going to do is read through this document and correct things as we go along, and you'll see some examples of the types of words and mistakes that spell check will not catch. Okay, so access to computers and the internet and the ability to effectively use then technology, so not then technology, the technology, are becoming increasingly important for fall participation, maybe not fall, full participation in America's economic, political, and social life. So maybe not live, maybe life. People are using the internet to find lower prices. Okay, so not find lower prices for goods and services, work from home, or startle their lawn business. Okay, so not startle, start their lawn business. Acquire new skills using distance learning and make better. There we go. All right, so I'm going to stop right there and think you have gotten a good idea of the kinds of things that spell and grammar check won't catch. So it is always a good idea to go back after you have finished your document and read back over it just to make sure there aren't any words like that that are words and are correctly spelled but are kind of in the wrong place. All right, so let's talk a little bit about using templates. Templates can be kind of fun because they can give you, there are all kinds of templates for all kinds of things out there. Like I was saying earlier, there's even one for a birthday card. But basically what they do is they give you a guideline and a way to get started on a document that maybe you haven't used before or that would take a long time to format and set up. This is just a good way to get started with a new document. So you can see that I am here in that File tab. I've gone down to New to start a new document, and then I'll show you how we can search for and start a new document using templates. So here we go. Let's see, here is a blank document, and then some other templates that have come up that have been used recently. But you can also go up to these categories of templates, or you can search in this search bar. So let's see, letter. There are all the options. You can see on the right-hand side, there are also some different categories. We could click business letter and narrow it down a little bit. And then we can pick one from over here in this area. Let's just do this one right here. We'll click create and give it a moment, and it has popped up with our template for this type of document. So now that we have our template downloaded, we're ready to start using it. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through each line and use it as a guide for what to put in on that line. So you can see that it's already kind of formatted like a letter. Up here where it says your name, we're going to put in Jane Sample. I'm going to put in our street address. I'll put in the Inca Candler Library, 1404 Sand Hill Road. And then you keep going down, filling out these things. Let's change dear recipient name. Let's change that to dear Mr. Smith. And then one of the other neat things that you can see here is that I put my name in up at the top as Jane Sample, and you can see that it has auto filled that into the name at the bottom as well. So it says sincerely Jane Sample. So that's the kind of nice thing that a template can do for you. And of course, here you can see the text of the letter is about a job application. Your letter doesn't have to be about a job application. It can be about really anything you wanted. The format of this one, of this type of letter, is a business letter. So you might be writing about somebody doing some repairs on a house, or an interruption in electrical service, or something else along those lines. Okay, so now the last thing that I want to talk to you about today is saving your documents. It's super important to always save your document, to do it early on in what you're writing, and then as you continue writing your document, to often hit save, so that you don't lose any of your work or information. So what you want to do before you save is you have to think about, where do you want to save your document? Are you using your own computer? In that case, you can probably save it to your own computer. Are you using a public computer like the one at the library, or borrowing a friend's computer? If that's the case, you probably don't want to save it to the computer yourself. You might want to save it to a flash drive or something like that that you can remove and take with you. So that's the first thing that you want to think about, and then decide where you want to save it. So for example, if I wanted to save my document to this computer, I could maybe save it to the desktop here, or I could pick documents, or maybe one of these other folders that I have put things into recently. You also want to give your document a specific name. You don't want it to be too long, but you want it to be descriptive enough that you can go back and find the thing that it was. So right down here in this field, you can type in a specific name for your document. And then the last thing that you want to do is you want to click Save. And that is how you save your document. For more information about Buncombe County Public Library's resources and services, please visit www.buncombecounty.org/library.